The tents appeared in the middle of the night, without warning. No announcement, no posters, just there like they'd sprung up out of the ground. The whole town buzzed the next morning, speculating, gossiping. Even the mayor hadn't known about it. But somehow, some deal was struck, and the Gypsy Circus stayed. For a town like ours, so small we couldn't even manage an annual fair, this was big news. That's how I ended up tagging along with my older brother Tommy and his friends that night. I was just 15, and my mother, who'd grown up in Boston, kept me on a tight leash. She only let me go because Tommy was responsible. If she'd known what he and his friends were really like, she'd have known I was safer on my own. "How much money you got?" Frankie asked, punching my shoulder. Of Tommy's 3 friends, I hated Frankie the most. He was twice my size and made it his mission to torment me, shoving, kicking, mocking me. Tommy never stopped him, just laughed along. I dreamed of the day I'd be strong enough to fight back. I handed Frankie the 20 Mom gave me, but I kept the 5 I'd tucked into my hat brim. I had my heart set on a candy apple later. Dad was a dentist, so treats like that were rare in our house. When we got to the midway, they ditched me almost immediately. I didn't care. I wandered between the tents, awestruck by the sights, the smells, the sounds. Barkers called out to come and see the wonders of the wild or the bizarre freaks of nature. I laughed under my breath. I'd arrived with my own set of freaks, but the lions, those were what I came to see. Parting reluctantly with $2, I stepped into the animal tent. The air was thick with the smell of sawdust, sweat, and dung. It was overwhelming, but somehow fitting. I fed a stray peanut to an elephant and then found a spot on a bench to watch the show. The lions were magnificent. On TV, they seemed big, but in person, they were gigantic. I held my breath as the tamer stuck his head between one's massive jaws. Its teeth, especially the long incisors, were terrifying. The back teeth, carnivols I remembered from a book Dad had given me, were sharp, scissor-like. I couldn't imagine ever being brave enough to get that close, let alone risk my head in that mouth. After the show, I debated spending another $2 for a second viewing, but decided I wanted that candy apple. As I headed toward the food trailers, a voice stopped me. "Read your fortune for $1?" I turned and froze. The girl was beautiful, so beautiful it stole my breath. She had mismatched eyes, one icy blue, the other brown like mine. It made her look otherworldly. Her long black hair flowed over her shoulders, and her tan skin glowed under the lights. She wore a genie-like outfit that bared her midriff, and for a moment, all thoughts of candy apples vanished. "Sure," I stammered, and she led me into her tent. Inside, she took my hand and traced the lines of my palm, giving vague predictions about my future. Then she paused, looked me in the eyes, and said something that struck me to my core. "You need to stand up for yourself. Don't let others control your fate." Her words echoed in my head as she walked me out, her hand lightly resting on my arm. That's when we ran into Frankie, Tommy, and James. Well, what do we have here?" Frankie jeered. "The little monkey has a girlfriend." Her hand tightened on my arm, and she smiled serenely. "I'm taking a break." But as she tried to pass, Frankie grabbed her arm. Tommy and James blocked her path. I froze, heart hammering in my chest. "Hang on," Frankie said. "I've got $1. Tell my fortune." Then, with a leering grin, he added, "What will a 10 get me?" Before I could process what was happening, Frankie grabbed her waist and yanked her toward him. She snarled something in a language I didn't understand and spat on his shoe. Frankie backhanded her, and everything spiraled into chaos. They dragged her into the tent. I tried to run, but James tripped me, sending me sprawling into the dirt. Blood filled my mouth as he hauled me up, pressing his switchblade against my back. "One move and I'll slice your spinal cord," he hissed. "Snitches end up in ditches." The sounds from the tent will haunt me forever. At first, I heard her struggling, screaming, but soon it went silent. That silence was worse than anything. I cried, choking on blood and snot, helpless. People walked by, oblivious or uncaring. The newspaper said her father found her beaten and naked in that tent. It took 2 days for her to recover enough to give the police a description. When they showed up at our house, my heart soared with hope. Maybe this was the moment to make it right. But Tommy's warning rang in my ears. "Don't you say a word, or I swear I'll end you." So I stayed silent. The trial was a joke. Tommy and his friends painted her as a liar, claiming she'd tried to extort them. The judge believed them, and they walked free, smug and untouchable. But the circus didn't leave quietly. As we exited the courthouse, the girl and her father stood with an old woman. Her Baba, I later learned. The old woman cursed them with words I didn't understand and made a strange sign in the air. When the girl saw me, she whispered something to her Baba. The old woman's eyes narrowed as she made another sign, this time aimed at me. Within a week, all 3 of them were dead. I was the last. When my transformation began, I didn't fight it. The bark spreading over my skin, the roots anchoring me to the earth, it felt like justice. The girl found me in the woods one last time. I begged for mercy. She said softly, "You'll be a tree until you grow strong enough to bear fruit. When your first apple falls, you'll be human again." It took 3 years, 3 long, silent years of watching the seasons change, of growing, of reflecting. When I finally became human again, I understood the lesson. Never again would I let fear silence me.